Next up is our very creatively titled workshop, Have Your Cake and Eat It Too, Optimizing for Reach and Outcomes in a Fragmented TV Landscape. And we're so pleased to have partnered with LG Ads to bring you this workshop today. And we very much appreciate their support of Mediaweek 2021. There's some great content coming up over the next 30 minutes. Our guests are going to track some of the latest trends in TV content consumption and the challenges and opportunities that advertisers face across this rapidly changing landscape. So before I introduce our co-presenters, I would note, as always, we will take questions. So drop them into chat if you hear something that perks your interest, or if you have a question, drop it into chat. We'll tackle as many as time allows. So let's dive in. I want to welcome our guests and co-presenters, Raghu Kodige, Chief Product Officer and co-founder, LG Ads, and Michael Mercedes, Vice President of Sales for LG Ads. Raghu, Michael, welcome to the virtual stage. How are you?
Thank you, Matt. Glad to be here.
Hi, Matt. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Good morning. The floor is yours.
I'm Raghu Kodige, Chief Product Officer of LG Ads, and I have Mike Mercedes with me, who will be co-presenting. Before we start, I thought it'd be good to properly introduce ourselves if anybody out there doesn't know what LG Ads are. So everybody knows LG, very well-known brand name in the United States. And I think a lot of you probably have already worked with us as Alfonso. We were one of the leading companies in the TV data space. And earlier this year, LG and Alfonso combined to form LG Ads. And the goal of this team is to represent everything related to advertising from LG. And what that means is, we are bringing exclusive first-party data from all LG TVs, as well as several other OEMs which are part of this partnership into the ad ecosystem. And this allows us to offer, really granular targeting using the TV data. And this is something that many of our customers have been using for many years now, in terms of being able to reach those people who are watching specific shows, or people who have been exposed to their ads on TV, tentpole events, all of that. So bringing that best-in-class targeting, along with proprietary inventory from LG TVs. These are the native home screen units that are on when you switch on the TV, or it could be an ad inside a streaming service that you're consuming content on. So all of that rich sort of premium inventory, again, exclusively sort of offered through LG Ads. And then last, but most importantly, the measurement solutions that the market has come to love in terms of what Alfonso has offered in the past. This is related to either their linear TV investment, or even the OTT and other forms of measurement services that we offer. So that's LG Ads in a nutshell, right? We are new in the market from a brand perspective, but this is something that has been available through various other services for a while now, and sort of we are excited to be here as part of the Mediaweek and talk just about how we see various clients that we've been working for many years sort of utilize CTV, and how what are some of the tactics they're using and why they're doing so, and so on, along with Mike here. So before we jump into sort of the how to set this up, I thought it'll be good to kind of look at some broad trends in the CTV space. Again, this is not a big surprise to any of you, who, especially in the last 18 months, stuck at home, probably have doubled or tripled your consumption of sort of streaming services. But this is a data that we have from the Deloitte team, which sort of looked at the consumption of streaming across sort of various groups of the population, right? So again, 80% of the people are subscribing to at least one of the streaming video services. So that is massive scale that we're talking about. And then when you look at the sort of the demographic or composition of that, whether it's Gen Z or Gen X or even boomers, there is huge adoption of this. which tells you that sort of streaming is very mainstream in the United States right now, and probably around the world as well. And then moving on to the next slide, this one looks at how much time people are spending every day, sort of watching either linear TV or CTV, right? Again, as you can see, in sort of the younger generation, that is almost equal to linear TV or even slightly higher if you talk about kids. And then even in adults, it is sort of 1/3 of probably what they're watching on linear TV, right? Again, these numbers have been growing rapidly in the last 18 months, like I said, and with more and more streaming services coming on board, right? Whether it's the Paramount Plus or HBO Max, Disney Plus, Peacock, and a whole host of ad-supported streaming services. Our prediction is this trend where streaming services will be on par with linear TV or even overtake, will just continue to accelerate in the market. And then this is also very interesting, when Deloitte surveyed people to ask whether they want to pay for the service or whether they would like it to be free and ad supported, a huge number, right? 43% of the people said they want it to be ad supported. And you can understand why, right? I mean, all of us know that we are still probably paying for some form of cable subscription because we want, some of the live sports or, certain shows that are on live TV. We're probably all getting one of, Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or one of the main services. And then, there are so many other choices. If you have family, you probably have a Disney Plus account. So there is going to be, reluctance on the part of consumers to pay for multiple streaming services, which means if they want the streaming content, the best way for them to get that is sort of the old ad-supported model, right? And so having some ads or, fully ad-supported and free is what the majority of the people want. And so this is something I think brands are taking notice of as they sort of look at how are they planning their investment on linear TV versus CTV, and that, I think this is important for all of us to keep in mind. And then the last part here is sort of what's happening as a result of all of these changes in consumer behavior in terms of the linear TV and the ad spend there. So when linear TV sort of the reach of the linear TV starts to go down, if an advertiser wants to get higher reach, the more money they invest into their linear TV budget, instead of getting them additional reach, it starts getting them higher frequency for the same audience. So there's sort of a diminishing curve at a certain point if you want to get that higher reach. So what a lot of brands are doing now is understanding that and trying to find that incremental reach of people who are light TV watchers or cord cutters or things of that sort on the CTV side. And if you do that, sort of in a data-driven, methodical way, then you can sort of achieve this what you see as sort of the higher curve here, which is sort of that optimized linear TV and CTV, which gives you higher reach rather than sort of having diminishing reach over time with higher spend. So that's what we want to talk about for the remainder of the talk here. So let me move on to sort of the next slide. And Mike, do you want to kind of talk about what you're seeing in the market when you are out on your sales calls and talking to clients?
Yeah, for sure. So I think often the discussion around CTV is what ad units are available, what platform is it running on, what TV is it running on, but we wanted to take an approach of looking at this from kind of the typical media planning cycle. So we'll take you guys through 5 different steps as to how we can better plan and run and optimize both linear TV as well as CTV, how they can complement each other. So we'll go through each one, starting with actually just identifying a core audience. Traditionally, I was a TV planner, buyer, amongst other things in my career previously. And often the kind of levers we looked at for TV planning were a few things. We looked at the ratings, we looked at the cost per point. Often we would use some sort of syndicated research study, like a survey, to gauge kind of our target consumers' behavior. But by and large, it was done in qualitative ways. And all of those planning mechanisms certainly have their piece in the puzzle. However, with newer technologies in the industry, we can go much deeper about this. So one thing our platform does is we're able to ingest any sort of segment. So that could be a CRM data set, that could be a third-party data set, like let's say location, web visitation, anything to that extent. We can ingest those segments, and with that, we can compare how does this set of devices within the segment compare to the national population. So for instance, you'll see in this image on the right, we're looking at indices across the various networks as it relates to a specific segment. The reason I think this is important is there's plenty of segments a brand can use as a proxy to their current customer. So what better way to understand where your TV schedule should be than actually understanding the true viewership of your target audience? Same thing goes with time of day. So this chart on the right, you're seeing a heat map of a specific segment as to when they're watching TV at the highest index level. So of course we know prime time is the largest ratings, but often a particular group may actually watch TV in a higher index in various day parts that you may not initially think of, and day parts that actually may be a bit less expensive to purchase than prime.
Mike, I think I've heard you give this example in the past, right? So, just to put this in more layman terms, if it is McDonald's trying to figure out what they need, where their audiences are, they could say, take people who visit their stores, let's say more than once a week, and then upload it to this system, and it can tell them, what shows are those users watching on TV? When do they watch TV? Those kind of things. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, and another example could be we're working with an auto manufacturer who could use something like Polk data, right? It's for auto purchase data, or even their own CRM systems if they have good purchase information. So it's all about using a data set as a proxy for your current consumer to better understand. And I think the best parts about this are when there's surprises. I think we tend to kind of in the industry think in buckets. This group watches this type of content. It's into these sort of things. And the reality is, as individuals, we have a mix of interests that don't always fall into those buckets. So using this sort of tool actually can help you find kind of these surprises that can really change a media plan for the better.
Right.
So now you have this audience information, you better understand your consumer. The next step is planning for outcomes. So what you'll see, kind of using the same output is where can we allocate funds of both a linear and a CTV schedule to best meet that audience's needs. So I think the more interesting part sometimes is not necessarily finding what works the best, but what works the least. Where can you actually optimize in the sense of we don't need more coverage here. So we'll look at things like network, day part, which you'll see on these charts, but even things beyond that, day of the week, the particular week of the month, the creative version. So there's lots of different things we can understand up front to allocate budget. And I think a big part of where CTV comes in here is even with unlimited budget for linear TV as an advertiser, the ability to granularly select everything you want in a TV buy is not the way the industry works. So where CTV can fit in, I think quite well here, is finding those gaps in your TV schedule that you need to fix and actually using CTV as the mechanism versus just buying more linear.
Yeah, I mean, especially with tentpoles, like a March Madness, not everyone can buy March Madness audience on linear TV, right? But I think that audience is so important for so many brands. And so sort of using that and saying, hey, let's run CTV campaign while March Madness is running, targeting that audience on CTV, I think just works just as good or as efficient as it would have if they were to run it on linear TV, right? So I think there are a lot of those things, whether it is identifying gaps or taking away share from a less performing sort of TV buy, or kind of finding these sort of niche audiences that are hard to reach and using CTV to complement that, I think helps finally get the outcome, right? The outcome is always important, which is reaching your high value audience as often as you can. I think that's really what most brands are looking for.
And I think March Madness is a great example because even with a linear TV buy, tentpole, like top level sponsorship, there's so much clutter on linear TV. There's such high volume of ads that activating on CTV is a way to kind of separate from that to some extent.
Yeah.
So that takes us now into how do we buy? So Raghu spoke about this earlier a bit. So there's this diminishing return effect with reach generation on television, on a linear television for that matter. So I think there's two key limitations of linear that make things like reach and frequency generation a bit more complex. The first is that we can't frequency cap. So a digital buy, at least let's say within one ecosystem, right? Not everyone talks together, but within one ecosystem, we can frequency cap. On television, your frequency level is determined simply by how much TV you watch and what TV you watch. So that first dollar you spend on linear TV is quite efficient at generating reach. However, each additional dollar generates more frequency and less additional reach. What that means for an advertiser is you're actually paying a much, much higher cost per incremental reach point. With that, CTV can complement. And I think one of the early trend slides when we looked at streaming per age break is really telling, is that one platform alone cannot do it. So by using data-driven CTV, we can actually help fix this problem. So we're actually able to suppress viewers of a linear TV ad under a certain frequency level, or above a certain frequency level. So for instance, if you're a brand, you're hitting that kind of 80 GRP a week level, we can take anyone who has been unexposed to your ad and serve them a connected TV ad. What that's doing is generating that additional reach without adding any additional frequency, which is thus giving you a way more efficient way to add additional reach to your schedule versus just, say, investing those dollars kind of where you already are in TV. The other part of this with frequency is that, again, with that lack of frequency limitation, what ends up happening is there's a spread of frequency against different levels of your buy. So if someone's a heavy TV viewer, it's very likely that they've seen your ad way more times than you would like to, or that actually efficiently drive results. On the other hand, even if you have quite a large TV buy, there's people who are going to get the ad very few times just by nature of them being a light TV viewer. Often these light TV viewers are consuming content actually within connected TV. So it's not to say they're necessarily a light TV viewer, but rather they are a light linear TV viewer. So by doing these targeting tactics like extending reach, extending frequency, we can optimize a linear TV schedule, making connected TV and linear work better together. Beyond that, too, there's lots of other ways that connected TV can be used. So it's not just limited to TV ad targeting, but rather we can do things like reach cord cutters, reach viewers of tentpole events like we mentioned, target viewers of your competitors' TV ads. So dealing with that clutter problem in a more effective way. So all some different ways that it can optimize between platforms.
I think this is very important point, right, Mike, which is, I think as the sort of the title of this workshop said, have your cake and eat it too. when you think of these two platforms working together, linear TV and digital, and CTV in particular, because for the end user, it is one and the same. They are seeing this beautiful ad on the big screen. How it got there, very few people really care. We in the industry know about all the nuts and bolts, and we know one is targeted and one is not. But the common consumer, them, it is like I'm watching TV, I'm watching my favorite show and I'm seeing ads over there. That's how they approach it. But from a brand perspective, you have one medium where it's not really possible to do that granular targeting, which is sort of the linear TV. The appeal has always been it has mass reach, and you know where the ads are running, and you can actually see it. Unlike sort of on the digital space, you may know you're buying on a particular website, but you may never see that ad yourself. So that has always been the big appeal. And then the fact that this is a passive environment and people are more engaged with the ads as a result. You're getting all of that on CTV. So if you want that, have your cake and eat it too, I think the way to do this right is, look at that incremental reach, but layer on one of these sort of specific targeting that gets to your core audience better. And so now you're able to control sort of what outcomes result from that investment in both the linear TV and CTV space. So I know you have some more sort of slides to talk about how those outcomes are measured and optimized. So let me move on to that.
Yeah, so then the question becomes optimizing in flight. So this is actually a term that's somewhat foreign even in the typical linear kind of upfront world. There's one of the disadvantages of a typical like upfront buy is that you only have so much flexibility in changing things. So we have a platform that can, in mid-flight, tell us things like how are the ads performing, right? So think about creative version. You're running 4 different creative versions on your linear TV buy, also running the same 4 on your connected TV buy. Which ones are performing the best? And not just from a let's talk in digital video terms, completion rate or click-through or whatever, any of these typical kind of short-term metrics, but rather, is it driving more people to my store? Is it driving more tune-in to the show that I'm promoting? Is it driving more sales, right? So we can actually look at comparisons of performance across creative version mid-flight, so that changes can actually be made, let's say heavying up the highest performing creative, rotating out one that's performing way lower entirely, looking at the flighting weeks, not just of your brand, but of your competitor's brand. So with our ad tracking technology, we can see what weeks in the past, let's say quarter, have your competitor run television? What weeks have they taken a hiatus? With that, we can predict upcoming, okay, what week can we actually invest in where share of voice is a much less intense battle and actually spend less to do that? So these are some ways that we can make adjustments, but this is kind of think of any sort of typical TV planning lever that we can look at. Day part, I think, is another great example. Do I need to heavy up in certain times of day because while a day part's performing well, is it actually heavy up enough to reflect that in my traditional linear buy? I think as that relates to connected TV as a media channel, because linear TV is restricted to some extent, you only can do so much to change it. Connected TV doesn't have those restrictions. The flexibility there allows these optimizations to be made, even if it's not on the linear TV schedule itself. And then finally, measuring success. So of course, we want to understand the result of the campaign. Traditionally, you had a reach and frequency delivery, you knew your audience delivery, simple things like that. Maybe we ran brand studies to gauge some upper funnel level, but even the connection there was loose. In our case, we can measure both the performance of linear television and connected TV to drive actual real world results like visitation to a restaurant, a car dealership, actions on a site. What was that cross-channel reach and frequency and how much additional reach did connected TV generate? So these are just a couple examples, but kind of any major offline KPI can be measured.
Yeah, and I think this part is also, it completes that loop, right? So the idea of this measurement is not to have, end of campaign report or something that you look only once in 6 months, but it is sort of that constant loop that we were talking about that feeds back into how you're running the campaign itself. You might look at this, every 2 weeks and say, okay, these are things that are performing well on linear TV. So let me continue what I'm doing there. But if I have the ability to take out some budgets from non-performing linear TV schedule, you can do that and deploy those dollars in somewhere else, either on TV or on connected TV. And same thing on connected TV. Not everything is going to work, right? You are going to buy across different types of apps and different targeting tactics even. Some will work and some don't work. And having that ability to constantly kind of refine is sort of what has always been missing for people when it comes to TV. And this is nothing new for people who are, investing heavily on digital or social, right? This is sort of bread and butter stuff, and they're always using these kind of metrics to measure and optimize their campaigns. But with linear TV and CTV, I think this is something new that brands are now really excited about, and they're using it, more and more as they plan their budgets in the future.
That bringing both data and connected TV inventory together allows both the planning, actual buying, optimization, and measurement of a campaign across linear and CTV. So it works to actually have the two media channels work together, benefit each other from everything that's happened to date.
I think the key takeaway here is, what we talked about here, that you are really kind of using these multiple tactics, both linear TV and CTV, and relying on that to kind of ensure that the overall plan is optimized and it is data driven. So we need to help kind of brands who are new to that sort of understand the power of data. But there are brands that already know this very well, that have been doing this for quite some time now, in terms of using the data to make decisions on where they're buying and how they're buying. Hopefully that that came across well to everyone as we were talking through this.
Great. So let me ask you guys both one question here that came in, a couple different versions of it from the audience, which was, give me a sec. Here it is. Have you been able to validate the incremental reach that CTV extends beyond linear? And what methodology do you use? Your graph implies huge incremental reach.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The way to know what the reach is first you need to know who all saw the ad. And that's where sort of LG Ads scale of 20 million households, where in those households, there is at least one sort of television device with our technology embedded. And this is commonly known in the industry as automatic content recognition, or video AI, maybe the other term that you have heard. This is software that's embedded within the OS that basically knows what people were watching on the TV, whether it's a linear TV show or an OTT show, if it's an ad, they may be playing video games, all of that, things that are going to the screen gets measured. And from that, we know deterministically whether someone was exposed to an ad, and if they were exposed to an ad on linear TV or on OTT. So we can measure when there is no OTT, what is the reach that they're getting, and when there is some CTV ad running, what was that incremental reach that they got?
And I think it speaks to a huge point here, which is that connected TV as a media format is great, but you need that connection between connected TV and linear to truly make it effectively work, right? A solution to generate incremental reach isn't simply I'll buy a bunch of CTV kind of randomly, hope it doesn't overlap with my linear schedule and gives additional reach. Rather, let's use actual targeting between the two channels to make sure we're delivering incremental reach up front. And then, of course, measuring it that same connection allows us to do it. But I think the key part here is measuring it is great, and hoping for the best is great, but actually being able to use targeting to make sure that happens ahead of time is even better.
That's great. Great answer. So guys, regrettably, we're out of time. There are a number of questions we're not gonna be able to get to. I'm going to send them to you. You'll be able to follow up with attendees, at your convenience. But I want to thank you both, Michael, Raghu, for your time, your participation, your insights, and a huge thanks to LG Ads for their partnership on Mediaweek 2021. They make it possible for us to bring this kind of content to the audience. So thank you all to you attendees who got up early with us and joined us this morning.